Well, Luke Smallbone, thank you so much for being here. Y'all have a new movie coming out
Yeah.
about your story, Unsung Hero.
Yeah.
What is it like to see your life story, your family's life story put up on the big screen?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I view it a little bit as it's my parents' story. You
Yeah.
know, in some cases, this is,
It certainly impacted you, though, right?
yeah, absolutely. I view it as my parents' story. And in some cases, yes, I
Yeah.
wanted to do something. At the end of the day, the behind the scenes story is this. I've told my family story at pretty much every one of our concerts for like the last 12 years. And I've had all these people come up and say, man, Luke, you should write a book, you know? And,
Yeah.
and I'm like, man, I was homeschooled. I don't read or write very well, you know? So like, maybe we could make a movie. And so we'd written a song called Unsung Hero. And I went to a producer friend of mine who we worked with on another film in 2016. And said, hey man, you've kept coming to me saying you want to work on another project. I said, well, my parents' story is a really special story.
Yeah.
And I've told it for years, and people keep coming up to me and telling it, you know, speaking about it. And I said, what do you think of if we started putting it into development and just see where a script takes us? And that was about nearly 4 years ago now. And the thesis really behind this film and the reason why we made it is Mother Teresa says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And I was the benefactor of my parents living out that statement. And I think that family is more important now than it ever has been in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure we value it the way that we should. And we were actually just speaking off of camera about busyness and how you maintain these types of things. And to me, my hope is that people walk away from this film saying, I want to be a better dad. You know, I want to be a better mom. Or there's other characters in the film that really impacted us that were just neighbors. Maybe you're going to start to walk away and say, man, I want to be a better neighbor. I want to be someone who really contributes to my local community.
Yeah. You talk about the importance of family and the role models that your parents were, and then even charting your own course now as a husband and as a father and also an artist, right? So you're traveling several times throughout the year and still maintaining those relationships with your family. And your wife has been open about some of the things that she's gone through. We've talked to her here at CBN about some of her journey. Talk a little bit about that, about leading your family, going through those things, and also maintaining your role as a recording artist.
Yeah. I think some people think that a good relationship is a relationship without struggle. I think some people think that a good family is a family without struggle. At the end of the day, I remember actually doing prep for marriage counseling when my wife and I were engaged, and they rated your relationship and they gave it a score. It was a super intimidating process, all right? And one of the things that came to reconciliation, and we scored really well in this, area of conflict resolution. And literally I went up to the people after and said, hey, thanks for, investing in our marriage and, or a marriage to be and our relationship and all that sort of stuff. And he said, well, you guys seem to be on the right, path. And anyway, all that to say is they valued conflict resolution as basically one of the most important attributes in your relationship. Well, it's the same obviously in a marriage. It's the same in a friendship. It's the same in your family. And what I realized about being in a family, in a marriage, is when resolved conflict takes place, it breeds a stronger relationship. It breeds a stronger friendship. And so, my family, my wife and I, we've been through our fair share of things, but man, I fiercely love my wife.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've actually been through some things. We've lived out our vows in our 20s.
Yeah.
Not many people usually are saying, hey, I've lived out my vows in my 20s. They usually think that's going to take place in their 60s and 80s.
Yeah.
But for us, working through some of those things is given our relationship the ability to look back and say, hey, if we went through this, why can't we go through that?
Yeah.
And I think that that's been nothing but a good thing for us.
Yeah, we hear a lot about it, and you've talked about this, like the busyness of American culture, of Western cultures, like be busy, be busy, be busy. Another thing I think we do is we do anything to avoid pain.
That's right.
Like we don't actually learn from pain because we'd rather numb it all.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about how you've seen the Lord work in the midst of some really painful stuff.
Look, C.S. Lewis says, pain is God's megaphone for change. And, think of even the concept of insurance, right? Insurance is basically you're paying someone to say, if something catastrophic happens, it's going to be less painful.
Yeah.
And it's a massive industry. I mean, it's a huge industry. I'm not saying you shouldn't have insurance. That's not my point. But it does tell you a lot about the psyche of people. And I think that what I've started to look at a little bit in, for Courtney and I, and a little bit for just even friendships. I'm in a band with my brother, is when pain comes, allow that to be an opportunity for change. Allow that to actually go, hey, if something catastrophic happened and I lose my marbles, probably says something about me.
Yeah.
It probably has less to do with actually, the circumstance. And so I think for Courtney and I, that's what we try to. I mean, look, no marriage, no friendship, no family is ever perfect.
Right. Yeah.
But when you go through, I don't think we should celebrate busyness. I think it's a fundamental mistake in America. One of the first things that you see an old friend and they have immense pride when they say just really busy. It probably means they're fairly unhealthy. And I'm not, saying that and putting that on everybody, but there is something about numbing, and we're, especially for us as males, we do it very well with work.
Yeah. Well, the last question I want to ask you is, you touched on vulnerable topics just here, and as a songwriter, you're dealing with those vulnerable topics when you sit down and you create a song, right? Talk a little bit about songwriting and how you're opening yourself up when you're revealing, this is what the Lord's brought me through.
I had a moment where, not to just bring up more, hardship, but we nearly lost our youngest son to a near SIDS accident when he was 2 months old. And, it's actually still one of the things when I think back, I can get a little emotional thinking about it, which means that it's still a raw emotion. And he lived, right? He eventually, we found him, certainly not conscious in getting up from a nap, and he had blood coming out of his nose. It was crazy. So we rush him off to the hospital, and they just basically when medical folks don't know what happened, they just call it a near SIDS accident. And a little while after that, my sister called me and she said, Luke, you've had your fair share of trials at this point. What do you do with this one? And that question really lingered with me for a little while. And I said back to her, Beck, I feel like God allows these things to happen because in the process of the story, it reflects his faithfulness in my life.
Yeah.
And it's my job to tell that story. So in some cases, I've written songs about that. I've written songs about almost in certain circumstances, nearly every struggle that I've ever had in my life, because I feel like God's given me those stories and I'm trying to shepherd those stories, steward those stories, because I think that if storytelling was good enough for Jesus, it's probably going to be pretty good for us.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I feel like he's given me these stories to share with people. So for the most part, other than maybe really certain things between my wife and I that just shouldn't be talked about, man, he can have all my stories. And I'm going to do my best to tell those stories in a way that hopefully impacts another. And hopefully someone will hear a song and they'll say, maybe I'm not alone. Maybe there is someone out there that's just like me. And I think that's the power of story. And in an inverse, it makes me feel less lonely because I know there's somebody else resonating with the things that I've walked through. Yeah,
for sure. Well, look, I could sit and talk to you for hours about all this stuff, but thank you so much for taking some time. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.